OMG, hello, my friends. I am so happy to be here today. And this is one of my favorite mindset principles to talk about. And in fact, I have appeared on a number of different other podcasts to talk about this very thing. Do you say appeared on a podcast? Anyway, so I'm excited to talk to you today about how we can stop complaining. And some of you, when you hear me say that, will think to yourselves, well, I'm not a big complainer. Maybe I don't need this episode. And others of you will think, oh boy, let me get my pen. And probably most of us are somewhere in the middle. So I've just realized I'm wearing a Life is Good t-shirt as I'm recording this. So I guess that's appropriate. Life is good, right? We're going to stop complaining and we're going to assume life is good. But it's much, much more complex than that. So we don't want to take this so lightly that it sounds like I'm just telling you to shove everything under the rug and speak like a ray of sunshine all the time. That is not what I'm saying at all. So we're going to dig in today. Okay. Now, let me start by telling you a story. So I started my entrepreneurial journey 12-ish, 13 maybe years ago with a direct selling company that I just love and products that I already loved. And at that time, I had worked in the corporate world and I had been teaching high school for quite a while. So I'd done a few different things, but I had never been my own boss ever for anything. And I was, and see if you kind of understand this or resonate with this, I was a good student. I was a good employee. I knew how to follow directions. I'm a quick learner. I know how to work efficiently. And boy, did I learn quickly that being my own boss was a totally different animal. And to this day, I am so thankful for that experience because it was almost like a little mini college for me to learn how to be an entrepreneur within a safety net of a company that already made products for me. I didn't have to make my own. I wouldn't be here today because I wouldn't have learned all the mindset and success principles that I now know if I hadn't started that. But I want to tell you a story about it, and that's why I went into that. So this was probably in the first year of doing that business. And I was doing it alongside teaching high school with two kids who were, I think, maybe in late elementary, early middle school at the time, and husband. And so we had busy lives and, all sorts of sports and things going on. But I have this very vivid memory of standing in our kitchen and talking about my direct selling business. I don't know what I was saying, but I remember my husband saying to me, just in a conversational way, if you don't like it, why don't you just not do it? And I just stopped because I I almost didn't understand where that came from. He was listening to me talk about my business and he said, "Well, you complain about it all the time." And listeners, I had no idea that I complained about it all the time. Zero. I was the reason we remember things, by the way, this is how we learn. We learn from an emotionally impacting sudden event, which is what that was because I was so shocked, or by repetition. So that is why I remember that, because it was emotionally impacting. I had no idea that I was complaining all the time. And he wasn't saying it in any sort of accusatory way. He was just so curious. You complain about it all the time. Why do you do it? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The quintessential oh my goodness moment, because I did not know. And so that conversation changed the course of my life, I'm going to say, because I started trying to figure out what exactly is coming out of my mouth in a typical day. And is it what I mean to be coming out of my mouth? And what does it say about what's in my head? And what does it say about what I want to do with my life? And I dug in. So that is what we're going to do today, is dig in. So I want you to think about this also. We have conversations with people all the time, right? You are maybe going to work in an office, in a school, or you're on Zooms a lot, or whatever, Teams for work, or you're out in the neighborhood chit chatting with the neighbors, or you're at the bus stop chit chatting with the other parents. You're around. Maybe you're even in a store chit chatting with a stranger. You're around, you're chit chatting with people. I really want to challenge you to pay attention just in an observational way, not judging anything. Okay, everything's fine. Just observe, pay attention to what those conversations sound like. And what I'm talking about is these kind of throwaway conversations. So at the time that I was realizing all of this, was teaching high school, as I said, and I would go and speak with the other teachers, and we would do something like this. Oh, I'm so tired this morning. Yeah, gosh, I was grading papers last night. I didn't get enough sleep. Oh, I never have a chance to take a break during the day, and I got to grade this stuff. And wasn't the traffic terrible this morning? I don't understand how I'm going to make it through the week. Isn't that really the copier's broken? Okay, geez, the copier's always broken. That was a conversation. And whoever was participating in that conversation, I don't think we were particularly upset. It's just how we talked. Or maybe it's, the bus is always late, and man, we're always standing at the bus stop in the rain. Doesn't it rain every day? Or, the traffic was bad. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. Yeah, the traffic always stinks. It seems to be getting worse. There's just nothing we can do about it. Blah, blah, blah. The weather. This is how we speak to each other. And this is particularly, interestingly enough, how we speak to each other in a quick, casual conversation. So when someone says to you, "Hi, how are you?" What's your inclination? Is it to say, the traffic, the weather, or is it to say, "Wow, I'm doing great. How are you?" And really think that. Or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Again, you don't have to be blowing sunshine everywhere all the time. That's not appropriate or healthy. I just want you to observe. The other type of complaining conversation that we fall into really easily, and I have worked really hard to stop doing this, is the busy competition. That's what I call it. So we get into these conversations with our friends or our colleagues about who is so busy. And then we kind of keep trying to one up each other. And I'm not sure we realize it. But if you listen to yourself, you will catch yourself most likely doing this. Oh, I'm so busy. After work, I got to go to this, and I got to volunteer and go to the practice, and I'm just running around the car all the time. And then the other person is saying, "Oh yeah, I got to go out of town, and then my kids this, and my husband that, and oh yeah, and I got to." It starts to become a little one-upping about how busy you are. And I think that busy competition is about attention. And we're going to talk about this being about attention in general. You know what? With the busy thing, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we're all busy. It's good to be busy. So let your life being full of things be a good thing, and see if you can stop doing the busy competition. That's one little piece of advice. Okay, well, let's dive into complaining. So, there is a great book for a work related environment related to complaining called The No Complaining Rule. And that book is written by John Gordon. And I have put the link for you on the website, omgteachme.com/read. Go check it out. Every time we talk about a book on the podcast, I put it there so that you can easily find it. So, John Gordon has written a number of books about positive thinking, positive coaching. So, this one is called The No Complaining Rule. And what he says in there is that complaining, even in the case where I'm describing to you, it just feels like a casual conversation. We might not even realize we're doing it. Complaining drains energy, it reduces productivity, and it hinders collaboration. And so you can hear those kind of office words, But that could apply to your personal life as well. Certainly, drain energy could apply anywhere. We don't want to do more things that drain our energy. We're already busy, right? We already are low on energy sometimes. And we certainly want to be productive. We want to be collaborating well with the people in our lives. So complaining is doing the opposite of that. And what he wants us to do in his book is, he says, in an office, what we should do is no complaining is allowed unless the complainer also offers a solution to the problem. Just let that sit for a moment. So, if you are complaining about something that actually might have a solution, that is a valid way to have a discussion, is what he's saying. So maybe I'm complaining that I'm complaining that I can't get this project done and I need more resources or something like that. Well, maybe that could be solved. And so maybe I say, I need more resources to get this project done. And I wonder if I could ask what's her name to help me. So I don't know, but giving a solution. Because a lot of what we complain about is not something that can be solved. So those are the things that maybe aren't so helpful and are energy draining and do kind of take us into those negative emotions, like the traffic, the weather, this is broken, these are broken, mine are broken. Pretty Women quote. Okay. So when I wanted to talk about this, I really, besides that book, I dived into, why do people complain? Why do we have these conversations where we're almost one-upping ourselves on how being worse and worse and worse off? The number one reason, and this is what I think I see most of us doing, is we want attention. And you know how we talk about how kids often will act out for attention and they don't necessarily care that it's positive attention or negative attention. They just want attention. Here's the adult way. The adult way of doing that is complaining. And unfortunately, it's been kind of normalized by, I would say, the media, the news channels, all of the social media outlets that are out there. I have seen on some news channel shows people just speaking so negatively and rudely about other people. It's kind of shocks me. So we're starting to hear things like this and it seems normal. And we're saying, well, I'll get noticed if I speak that way as well. And if we take this a little bit further, are we wanting people to feel sorry for us? Are we wanting people to help us and make it better? And if we really dig in, are we wanting people to take care of us? Are we wanting coziness and wanting to be coddled and wanting the snuggie on the couch feeling? So sometimes there's deep stuff underneath our complaining habit and wanting that attention, that we want to feel as if someone is going to help us because they see us and we're important. And so they'll help us. And that may come from childhood things, school things, who knows where. But there's usually some type of plea for attention when we're complaining. Now, sometimes it simply feels good in the moment to complain. We're frustrated about something, we're feeling some negative emotions, and we just, bleh, bleh, I'm annoyed, this. So that might be okay. That might be what I would call venting. Or when it becomes a habit of just blehing all the time on everyone all over the place, then maybe not so okay. So let's just talk about venting versus complaining for a second. So I do want you to feel your emotions. And that means the negative ones and the positive ones. And you are going to get upset about something. And you are going to be frustrated by someone or by a situation sometimes. It's life. These things are going to happen. And venting may be okay. Know your audience, know who's appropriate to vent to. And I would want you to allow yourself a certain amount of time to vent and then try to move out of that. Because again, when it becomes a habit and it's an ongoing thing, that's when we're just complaining to complain and we want the attention or we want the adrenaline hit of all the time. If you can give yourself 5 minutes or a half an hour or, one day, depending on the severity of what's happened, and you say, I am going to pout and I'm going to vent about this and I am letting it out today. Okay. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's helping you to process your feelings. Maybe it's helping you to calm down and let it out so that you can start moving towards a solution. That's positive. That's venting. Complaining is when we sit in that and we do it over and over and over and over. I read an article that said the average person complains 30 times a day. Now, that might be in conversation or it might be to yourself in your mind. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. Our minds are wired to go a little bit negative because they want to keep us safe. It's all about safety and not putting our neck out, not taking a risk. But 30 times a day, that's a lot. And the way the brain works, unfortunately, for those of us who got into a complaining habit, is when we do something over and over and over, when we say things, when we think things over and over and over, our brains rewire to do that thing even more and more easily. So the more we complain as a way of making conversation or just in general complain, future complaining becomes more likely. The brain is restructuring itself to find things to complain about. Isn't that scary? So if this becomes the way we have a conversation, you're going to walk into your office and your brain is going to give you on a tray, on a platter, all the things that you could complain about to go and have a conversation with your coworker. You're going to think sooner and more quickly about the things that you find fault with, the difficulties, the problems. They're going to come right up into your conscious brain from your subconscious because that's becoming the default thought pattern. And that's what happens to most of us. And this is what happened to me. I did not even realize I was doing it. That was my default thought pattern. Now, unfortunately, not only does this create negative emotions for ourselves and create this thought pattern of always looking for the worst thing to start with, it kind of communicates a negative emotional state to people around us. And teachers have rough lives. I've said this before. That is a hard job. And sometimes maybe we all needed to vent, but we were all kind of negative, 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 negative. It wasn't helping anybody climb out of anything. So sometimes people feel this just negative emotion coming off of us if we're complaining all the time. Complaining also leads to more stress because it creates elevated cortisol levels. Elevated cortisol, stress hormone levels, make it harder to learn, make it harder to remember things, lower our immune function, lower our bone density, cause weight gain, potentially higher blood pressure, risk of heart disease. There's a ton, oh my goodness, a ton of things that happen to us because of elevated cortisol, and complaining does have a hand in that because it's creating more stress. We are training ourselves to look for the hard stuff first, and then we're speaking about it, and words create emotion, and the emotional state we're in then affects how we act, how we do things in life. That is powerful. And sitting in that energy is not good for our bodies. It's not good for our mindset. It's not good for the people around us. So, venting might be a productive thing. Maybe you check with the person you're venting to and make sure they're okay with it. Maybe you tell yourself how long you're going to give yourself to vent. And hopefully, you also are then just getting it out and then starting to think, okay, what can I do? Maybe it helps you to get out of the heightened emotional state, process that, and figure out what I do. But when it becomes a habit and we're just always going for the negative, complain, 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 that's a problem. So Stephanie Vaza, who writes for Fast Company, has a quote that I think is useful here as we kind of wrap this up and then move into, okay, what are we going to do about it? She wrote that a half hour of complaining every day physically damages a person's brain, according to research from Stanford University. Whether you're the one griping or you're the one listening, exposure to negativity peels back neurons in the hippocampus, the part of the brain used for problem solving and cognitive function. Over time, complaining becomes a habit. If you're surrounded by complainers, you're more likely to become one. That's her quote. And that kind of sums up what we were talking about. So we need to think not only about what we're doing, but also who are we surrounding ourselves with. So how do we climb out of this? What did I do? Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. After I had this realization, standing in the kitchen, talking to my husband, who said, why are you complaining all the time? Why just don't do it if it's that bad? And it wasn't that bad. I had this realization. I started observing, which is the first step that I want you to try. What do my conversations look like? And this is how I realized that I was complaining all the time about the traffic, about getting up early, about the weather, about the busy schedule, busy, 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 busy. And once I realized that, I decided, you know what? I don't want to be always speaking this way. And there was a period in there where I really kind of felt like I forgot how to have a conversation. Honestly, I hope this doesn't happen for you as you're going through this. It was worth it. It's worth it. There seriously was a period of time when I could not think of anything to say because I decided that I was not going to complain. I had legitimately no idea what else to talk about. And boy, when that happened to me, did I realize this is serious. I have no idea how to have a conversation without complaining about these mundane things. Wow. I'm like the cloud over Eeyore's head. And I don't know if I always came across that way. I'd have to go back and ask people, years and years and years ago, and they probably wouldn't necessarily tell me the truth, would they? But I just kind of had to go through this process. So I realized it. That's number one. Observe. How is it that you're conversing with other people? How are you talking to yourself? We're especially mean to ourselves. But is it complaining? Is that going through your head all the time? Number two, can we stop? Now, this is where I got stuck because I kind of didn't know what to say. So I'm going to give you some tools to help yourself. The first thing is let's recognize and try to switch it. And I'm kind of sitting here in the conversation for a moment because this can be a big challenge and it can take time. And you need to be kind to yourself as you're trying to change these habits because it can take time. There were times when I legitimately actually had a rubber band around my wrist and I would snap it when I realized, wait a minute, I'm about ready to complain or I'm in the middle of a complaining conversation. And then I would try to figure out where else to go. You can carry something in your pocket that reminds you to be grateful, a little stone or rock or some other reminder, a coin that reminds you to be grateful or reminds you not to complain. So we need some sort of physical reminder Maybe you have a little alarm on your phone a few times during the day that says no complaining when it goes off, or you're doing great without complaining, whatever. You can make it more positive. You need a physical reminder. So we've observed it. Then we have some sort of physical reminder to recognize when it's happening and to help ourselves not complain. And number three, which is kind of going to need to go all along the same time, is let's see if we can start rewiring our brains and changing our outlooks. And so the tools I'm going to give you to do this are going to be things you've heard of before. So I would say pick one of these things that really resonates with you and try it. Number one, gratitude. So think about every night 3 things you're grateful for from the day. That's from The Gap and the Gain, which is also at omgteachme.com/read. Think about in the morning what you're grateful for that's going to be happening that day, or hasn't even happened yet. You can still be grateful for it, or the people in your life, or the sunrise, whatever it is. Start having a gratitude habit daily. It will gradually make new paths in your brain, because remember, we said if we complain all the time, our brain is always going to look for the negative first. We've trained it that way so that we have something to talk about. Now we need to retrain and look for the good things. Laughter is a powerful thing. Find more ways to laugh. This is one of my tools. I love to talk about laughter. You're going to enjoy next week's podcast episode because we are going to be talking about this, among other things. Find more ways to laugh. It changes your body chemistry. It changes the way you interact with people around you. Huge. Maybe it's service. Maybe you are someone who loves to volunteer, wants to make a difference. Add more of that into your life that you can be happy about. And then think about that and try to talk about that. It feels bigger than, what the traffic was. So maybe we talk about something bigger than what the traffic was or what the weather was. Or maybe it's journaling, writing. You're letting out. A great tool for this is to let out all the complaints. Just, blah, 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 blah. I'm making writing motion with my hand on the paper. Rip that piece of paper out, rip it up, throw it away. It's kind of a visual thing for your brain. Like I let it all out, blah, rip it up, throw it away. And then if you were in the masterclass in June, you learned how to do an intentional thought model and figure out, well, what do I want to be thinking and what do I want to be saying? And if you weren't, stick with me. We'll come back to that at some point. All of these things are going to help you to rewire your brain, not to focus on the negative first, to stop giving yourself all this complaint fodder first, and to give yourself good things first. And then number 4, now we need the very practical piece. What if I'm in a conversation with someone that I've always been talking about traffic and weather and the copier's broken with them? How do I change? Oh my goodness. How do I change? So I want you to have a few topics or sentences in your mind that you can use in a conversation to flip it around. If you catch yourself, hey, snap the rubber band too, right? But if you catch yourself headed down this complaining path in a situation where you're not working for a solution, you're just kind of mindlessly complaining, what could you do? Well, you could have in your mind that instead you'll look for the first opportunity in the conversation to say, hey, what fun thing did you do on the weekend? Or what was the latest movie that you saw that you loved? Or what was your favorite trip last year? Something, whatever is appropriate for the types of conversations you have. Have a question in your mind that leads people to talk about something they like, and find a way to work that into the conversation. And I would say just have one in your mind, because you don't want to be trying to memorize all this stuff and it gets weird. Also, I want you to just change the subject. Sometimes we get into this habit, into this rut of complaining about the traffic or complaining about the weather, but maybe we can just talk about something else. As soon as there's a breath, there's an opening. Maybe you can say, hey, are you going to that meeting this afternoon? Although that's probably right for complaining too, isn't it? But just change the subject. And then make sure that you know who and what your triggers are for these complaining conversations. Is it certain people that you're always kind of falling into this rut with? Is it certain situations, times of day, places? Is it your job? Is it your volunteer work? Is it making dinner every night? You're tired. See if you can alter that scenario even a little bit so that you're making a new mental pathway. It feels a little bit different than the usual complaining situation. And you can maybe take your conversations and your thoughts in a little bit different way. And the very most basic one, when somebody asks how you are, of course, we know that sometimes they're actually not that interested, right? You can just say fine and move on. But if someone asks how you are and you're actually going to have a conversation, I challenge you to say something positive. Because my answer usually sounded something like this. Somebody says to me, hey, how are you? And I say, oh, fine. But man, the traffic was bad this morning. Or, oh, it's so hot today. Really? That's the first thing I would say? Yes, it was. That was the first thing I would say. What if you said, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And, oh, had a great weekend. Whoa, that changes the energy of the conversation at the start. And it doesn't mean you're not going to end up venting, complaining, whatever. All of this is just practice. You need some understanding of your triggers and some ways to just make a slight change. So have a question in mind you can ask that will change the situation. Know your triggers. See if you can put yourself in a slightly different situation more often. And know how to answer someone who asks how you are without immediately giving a complaint. And again, let me say, as we wrap up, I am not saying that you should never voice negative emotions or tell someone what's bothering you. That is the opposite of what I'm saying. So please don't hear me incorrectly. Yes, if something is a problem and you are talking about it and you are working on a solution, or you just need to let it out, do that. Let that be a healthy venting session. And let's avoid it being the way we communicate all the time. It's not the same thing. And when we move from healthy venting into, I always find all the bad things, and that's what I always communicate about all the time without even realizing it, there's a big, big difference mentally and physically between those two. So I hope this helps. Let me tell you what, we all fall off the wagon on this. I catch myself sometimes getting very, the traffic, the weather, I'm tired. And I'm pretty good about catching it. I take a step back. I think about some of my tools that I have and I see if I can get better. I know my kids and my husband would say I am not perfect. And at the same time, I have come so far and I'm so proud of myself. And it is healthier and it is happier if we can cut this habit. So drop me a note on social media. Tell me what you thought. I am continuing to add songs to the Nostalgia OMG Teach Me playlist. So drop me a note with your favorite song that makes you feel nostalgic as well. I've got December 1963 on there lately. And make sure you check out what is going on with the waitlist for the community this fall. You want to get on the waitlist now, omgteachme.com/coaching, because we are starting a Shine Your Light and Show Up in the World community in the fall, and I am so excited about it. So make sure that you know what's coming. All right. See you next time.